The BAPI framework auto-generates the API docs automatically upon startup. And this is done by um, the generation of your I/O state. Now, your I/O state files can either be dynamically generated, which you can just run this command from a shell prompt, or you can build them yourself. Now, if you build them yourself, it's a complex file. It's very similar to OpenAPI or RAML or API Blueprint. You can see that every single endpoint is listed out and tells you how to call it, the description, the rules that are required for calling it, for batching, for hooking it, and even for what is how to request it and the data that is returned. You can even specify this. In this example, however, we're just saying everybody who has access, all the roles that have access in this example, they all access it and respond the same. And what that will generate is API docs like we have here. Now, the API docs that are auto-generated will give you, through the BAPI front end, something very, very similar to this, where if you go into here, you can click on the URI, and it will show you the how to call it through your version and controller and action. And it will even give you an example curl call, and if that's not good enough, you can even generate the JSON for that, so that you can build that in down here in your sandbox environment. But you can also test it using the test data that you have in there as well, and it will give you a test example. Now, this is done by putting that into your mock data. Now, in every single one of these, in every single one of this data, you have to put in some mock data to be able to do that, or to be able to call that or test it like that in the sandbox. In this example of mine, I put in a test ID of 112. That is my test user, and so I can call it like that. But this gives you all the appropriate information for my role too. Now, if I log out, you'll notice that I have access to IO state, hook, person role, role stat, architecture test, so on and so forth. Now, if I log out and I log in as a test user, there we go, I will have an entirely different view. Notice how much more reduced this view is. That's because it is not giving me a API doc for the admin, it is giving me an API doc for a user view. So it is extraordinarily different, and I call it, each one of these endpoints are called differently. Classic example here for the user, I don't send an ID. Now it just uses my existing ID and it returns that. Notice it's the same user because it's the test user, but it returns the, it gives me an API doc, an auto-generated API doc for this role. This is very different from Swagger, because Swagger will give you the exact same API doc for all roles and all privileges, the exact same. So if you go in as a user or an admin or whatever, it will show you the exact same thing for everybody. So not very secure. I know it's security via obscurity, but still you want to be able to reduce the number of calls to your endpoint, not increase them. Even if they're being rejected, it's still additional traffic. So this is a view of the auto-generated API docs. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to get in touch.